Thank you, Natalie. Thank you to the team, the choir. It's truly an amazing portion, as Johannes alluded to already. If you think about it, by het Hanan, the root is Hanan, it's about grace. And it's Moses pleading for grace. And it's also the root of the word or the name Yochanan, John. So we're going to read quite a bit out of the book of Yochanan, the book of grace, John. But this reading is Deuteronomy chapters, basically last part of 3, 4, 5, 6, and the start of 7. Now, irrespective whether you are from a traditional Christian background, you would have heard Deuteronomy 5 a lot, because it is a repeat of the 10 words. So many times on a Sunday morning you will either hear Exodus 20 or Deuteronomy 5, either one of the two. If you're from Judaism, well, Deuteronomy 6 with the Shema is just like massive. And then obviously people that reads both the front and the back appreciates both parts, chapters 5 and 6. So there's a bit of a double blessing there. But it starts with Hanan. And isn't it amazing that in the portion where we see the repeat of the 10 words, Deuteronomy 5, the title thereof is actually about grace. And it's a connection between the law and grace in a beautiful manner. Va'et Hanan, and I plead for grace, I plead for mercy, I plead, which I think is a prayer of each and every one of us. If you haven't pleaded for grace yet, the chances are that you wouldn't have been here. But it's because we are pleading for grace regularly to our Heavenly Father through our Messiah that has compelled us because of love to be here. And because we're here because of grace, because of His love, we say, but we want to listen to your voice, the voice of the Master. Deuteronomy 5, among others. And the connection between this plea for grace, Va'et Hanan, and Deuteronomy 5, linking them all together, is Shema, hear. Because if you're here, then it will connect these concepts with each other. Without hearing, you're only going to have the law. Without hearing, you're only going to seek the grace. But by hearing, you connect the two. And therefore, I think in our Master's great wisdom, by giving us this reading, where Moses, the greatest of all prophets, are pleading for grace, to have the repeat of the law, the Torah of the 10 words actually, in one, with the Shema, makes a lot of sense. It's by hearing the word that our pleas will make sense and that it will have fertile ground. And so we're going to unpack these concepts a little bit. But it was, before doing so, it was a massive week in various respects. Spiritually, politically, economically, domestically, globally, many things have happened. I'm only going to touch on one. And that was that Thursday was the 9th of Av. And the 9th of Av is traditionally seen as the most awful day, the most terrible day within the history of the Jews specifically. It said that, and we've read that a few times, we've spoken about it in terms of the 10 spies. They've heard the voice, they've heard the report from the 10 spies, they went to the tents and they've grumbled. that was the 9th of Av. And it was basically the start of the bad news in the sense, because that's the day where they've said you will not enter into the land because you've grumbled in your tents. You did not obey, you did not listen, you did not shema, and therefore you will not enter into the promised land. But then the first temple destroyed, the second temple, the Bar Kokhba revolt ended, they expelled from England, expelled from France, expelled from Spain, the First Crusade, the World War I broke out, and the deportation from Warsaw Ghetto to the death camp in Treblinka. All either on the 9th of Av or in the vicinity, the period of the 9th of Av. So what links them, these 10 things, is that they've all been removed from the land, evicted or killed. So the land and access to the land and going into the land is central to all of them. It's the week we read about Moses pleading to do what? To enter into the land. Isn't that phenomenal that every year, somewhere close to the 9th of Av, we will have Ve'et Hanan, where they've been expelled from the land, been killed, many bad things have happened, all linked one way or another to the covenant and the land. You will have Ve'et Hanan. I plead to enter into the land. And so this prayer of Moses for himself actually is also a prayer for everybody else. It's a plea, it's a prayer that he prayed for himself, and we're going to look at that prayer a little bit. But it is also for many, many, many more. It's also for us. He's also actually asking us, are you praying this prayer to enter the land? It's asking the question of all generations from that moment on, are you pleading to enter the land? And because it's available for everybody, open access, but there are a few conditions. And it's those conditions that he was laying out then in this Torah reading. Because it concludes with chapter 7. When Yodevah brought you into the land, you must destroy all these altars, and you must destroy the Asherim, and you must do this, and you must do that, and enjoy this land of milk and honey. That's how the Torah reading ends. So those are the bookends. Pleading to enter the land, first few verses, concluding with when you enter into the land, you must do this and enjoy the milk and honey. In between are the details. And here we are, and we are contemplating everything that's happening, and the question is actually, when we sang the Shema, Hear, O Yisrael, is it actually also a prayer to enter the land? A plea to enter the land by the grace of the Almighty. So, we take this prayer a little bit further as we will continue. But just a brief reflection on what I shared 2 years ago with around this reading. And I pleaded Ve'et Hanan with Yodevah at that time. The word Hanan, the root is to seek, to implore, to seek favor, mercy, pity, with the central idea of beauty. Love, care, and that which abounds within the precincts of a camp that's surrounded with walls, a circular tented camp. If you sort of picture that circular tented camp, that forms the boundary of it, and all the love, care, attention, favor inside this tented camp, where people are looking after each other, nurturing each other, asking how is it with you? Can I help you? Looking after each other's children, have the same common goals, common objective, going forward. That's the idea of Hanan, is to be within this tented camp. And to enjoy all the love and beauty inside. And Moses was asking, I would like to be in that number. Who would not like to pray that prayer? I would like to be in that number going forward. I would imagine everybody says, when we turned our lives from the wicked ways of the evil one, and we turn towards our Messiah, and we say, Messiah, Yeshua, you're our master, our king, we will follow you. What are we saying? I want to be in that number. I want to be in that tented camp going forward. And in order to unpack this concept, to be in that number, and to go forward to the promised land, Moses sort of unpacked the details. He says, you're the greatest prophet, pleading to enter, but the answer is no. We'll talk about that a little bit. You were not a shepherd leading and teaching your people, according to my words. At some point in time, you've heard the voice, you did not obey. And so you will not enter. When he hit the stone, where he had to speak to the stone. But there's a second current there. That's the obvious first layer of that meaning, of that interpretation. But there's a second one, and we'll touch on that. He pleads with them to obey the word of the Father in order for them to enter into the promised land. Not just to them. He pleads with us. That's why that prayer is a prayer also for us. Obey the Father's voice, enter into the promised land. But he prophesied that they will fall into idolatry, which has happened many times. But he said that it will happen. And I must wonder how it must have felt for him. He's doing this sort of a little bit convoluted. He's pleading with them, listen to the voice of the Father, enter the promised land, but then sort of in the same breath says, but you guys are going to mess up. It must have really tortured his soul, I would imagine. And part of that, the next section is, after prophesying about the idolatry that's going to happen, he says, but in that, and when you're reminded of that, you must remember who Yahweh is. The great Yahweh, the creator of the universe, the one who has chosen you, the one of the covenant, the one who cannot change, the one who calls you, the one who loves you, the one who will always be there for you. Turn back to him. And then the 10 words. Once you've done that, once you got to that position where you say, I acknowledge who Yahweh is, well, then the 10 words make a lot of sense. Because then there's a framework, then there's a context for that. And then, when you've heard the 10 words, well, then you have to Shema. Because just having the 10 words on a piece of paper, tablets of stone, that's a monument. It's beautiful, but it's a monument. You must hear it. Then it's life. And so he's taking us progressively through this plea for grace that sort of encompasses everything. But you will fail. But remember who he is. Listen to his voice. Listen to the word. But then go from building monuments to life. And once you've done that, chapter 7, you will enter in the land. Because he loves you and because he's faithful to his covenant. And that's Torah reading. So, the whole idea is to speak into the children of Israel. He's, 3 weeks before his passing. He's in the last month of his life. So wherever, I don't know where in the last month, but he's within the last month of his life. And he knows that, and the people knows that. He's in the last month of his life. And he's pleading with them to stay in that camp, enjoy the beauty and the love of that camp. Because by being in that camp and enjoying the beauty and the splendor and the glory of that camp, that will be the testimony, that will be the witness to all the other people. Because all the other people will look at that tented camp and says, how do I get in there? Because that really looks cool. I really want to be there. And that's the witness. The love, the beauty, the harmony, the grace, the Hanan within the tented camp becomes the witness of the great Messiah, and that becomes the draw card pulling other people in. It has not changed. It's still the same message. How do we take the gospel forward? By speaking it or by demonstrating a tented camp of love, care, and that being the witness, pulling people in. So it's a plea, it's a prayer to remember the beauty, the love, the kindness, and the favor within the boundaries of the camp, and with that, to enter the land. So phenomenal reading. So let's unpack it a little bit. And I plead it. Going to go through it sort of step by step. And I pleaded with Yodhe-Vavhe at the time, saying, O Master Jehovah, you have become to show your servant your greatness and your strong hand, for you is a mighty one in the heavens or on earth, who does according to your works and according to your might, glorifying the Father as to his greatness. I pray, let me pass over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, this good hill country and the Lebanon. So may you please enter the land. And then the answer. Yodhe-Vavhe was enraged with me for your sake. For your sake. And would not listen to me. And Yodhe-Vavhe said to me, enough of that. Speak no more to me about this matter. Why is that? I've said earlier, it's because he hit the rock, didn't listen there, and that's the primary reason. But there's the secondary reason. For your sake, do not enter the land. So, much has been written about that as to why that would be the case. But within the context of chapters 4 and 5, especially, the reason is, you must not be there idle. Moses, the person, can never become an idol. That's why we also don't know where his grave is or where his bones are. You cannot have a sepulchre for him. You cannot have a monument for his. You can't have a gravesite for him because we don't know where it is. Moses, the person, can never be idolized. Doesn't matter how big a person he was. Because if you just continue the next verses going forward into chapter 4, it's all about idolatry. And he speaks into idolatry. And he says, stay away from idolatry. There's no one else but Yodhe-Vavhe, not even me as a person. And for your sake, I'm not entering. Because you must remember, in terms of the age and the seniority, he's like the serious Madala there. I mean, he's 120. He's still as young and as fit to do the mountain thing. And the youngsters around is like, wow, look at this man. He lived in Egypt. He says, no, do not idolize Moses. It's a strong message, because it's still valid today. Don't idolize Moses, the person. Separate between Moses' words, which obviously is the Torah, and then Moses, the individual, the person. Can never idolize a person. But there's a third reason, and that is that there's a Yeshua. There's a prophetic connection. Moses and his words can guide you. It's Yeshua that takes you. And we have to make that split. And so the transition from Moses to Joshua has been phenomenal, prophetically. And I would argue that as phenomenally important as it was 3,500 years ago, so phenomenally important it is today, perhaps even more. And we're going to listen to, I hope I'm going to manage this teaching. Going to listen to the words of Messiah later. In the book of Yochanan, about this. There's Moses and his law. Follow Messiah. And this transition was for us to realize the works of Messiah and the importance of Messiah. All right, let's try to proceed. I am pleading Israel, hear. I'm pleading with Israel to hear and listen to his message. Deuteronomy 6, and this is the command and the laws and the right rulings which Jehovah your Elohim has commanded to teach you to do in the land which you are to possess, so that you fear Jehovah your Elohim, to guard all his laws and his commands which I commanded you, and your son and your grandson, and all the days of your life, that your days be prolonged. I plead with you, do this. Have no idols. Have no idols. And you shall hear, O Israel, and you shall guard to do, O Israel, Jehovah your Elohim, Jehovah is one. Have no idols. Not even Moses as an idol, as a person. And you shall love Jehovah your Elohim with all your heart and all your being and with all your heart. Have no idols. I mean, it's like crazy. Remember, we haven't read everything in chapter 4 now, but about chapter 4 is everything about idols. And this builds from chapter 4, which was all about idols. And to turn back from idols. And these words shall be in your heart, and it shall be impressed upon your children, and shall speak to them when you sit in your house, and when you walk in the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. The Shema is all about a call not to have idols. There's one L. And he's one. Don't have idols. The Targum, which is the Aramaic translation, is very interesting on this one. It's a bit long, but I'm going to read it. So I'm sure not many of you have read the Targum. I haven't before preparing for this. Targum is the Aramaic translation. It's not an official translation because there's a lot of commentary woven in. It was known at the time of the disciples. They knew the Targum. Well, there was actually more than just one Targum. But it has been codified and put into writing a little bit later. And this is the declaration of the commandments and the statutes of the judgments of the Lord your God have commanded me to teach you to perform in the land which you pass over to inherit, and thou mayst fear the Lord thy God, and keep all his statutes and precepts which I commanded thee, thou, thy son, and thy son, and the son of thy son, all the days of thy life, that thou mayest prolong thy days. Hearken then, Israel, to keep and do that it may be well with thee, and you may increase greatly, as the Lord God of thy fathers have spoken to thee, that he will give thee a land producing good fruit, pure as milk, sweet and tasty as honey. When the end had come to our father Jacob, this is where it's different from the normal reading. This is where the previous slide was pretty much what we've read in the Bible text, the normal text. This is slightly different. When the end had come to our father Jacob, that he should be taken up from the world, he called the 12 tribes his sons and gathered them around his couch. Then Jacob, our father, rose up and said to them, Just a second. Jacob had a name change. It became, okay, bear that in mind. Do you worship any idol that Terah, the father of Abraham, worshipped? Going into idol worship. Do you worship the idol of Terah? Do you worship any idol that Lavan, the brother of his mother, worshipped? Asking the children, the tribes, the 12 sons there, are you going to fall into any form of idolatry? Or worship you the God of Israel? He's asking the 12 sons that. The 12 tribes answered together with the fullness of heart and said, Hear now, Israel our Father, Lord our God, the Lord is one. Wow. Wow, that's different. This is the understanding of the disciples. This is the understanding of the scribe in Mark 12, when Messiah Yeshua asked, when the scribe asked him, what is the greatest command? And Messiah answered the Shema. This is the scribe's perspective on the matter. This is his context. This is the word that he knew. It's this. The 12 tribes answered together with fullness of heart and said, Hear now, Israel our Father, the Lord our God is one Lord. But the context is, do you worship any idols that Terah, the father of Abraham, worshipped? Or do you worship any idol that Lavan, the brother of his mother, worshipped? Or do you worship Yahweh, the God of Israel? And they answered. Israel, Jacob responded and he said, May his great name be blessed forever. Malchuto et Olam, which we sang. Moses the prophet said to the people of the house of Israel, Follow after the true worship of our fathers, that you may love the Lord your God in each disposition of your hearts, and also that he may accept your souls and the dedicated service of all your wealth, and let these words which I commanded you this day be written upon the tablets of your hearts. Well, that's again what we see in the normal text, more or less. But there's a little bit, but this detail is not there. So, when Moses gave them the Shema in Deuteronomy, gave us the Shema in Deuteronomy, there was a backstory, which our fathers knew. And this is the backstory. It's about idols. Now, chapter 4 makes a lot of sense, that he just so drilled into idols. So, Hear, O Israel, Yahweh Elohim, Yahweh is one. It's a call against idolatry. It asks, are there any other God in our lives of any form, kind, or shape? Shema is from Shama, to hear, to obey, to respond. It's a verb. I do not hear unless I obey and I respond. I only hear if I obey and I respond. The action is only measured of successful hearing. The thing is here that the Shema is not very good for marriage counseling. If you use it within the context of marriage counseling, it can become tricky. Do you hear? Or do you just listen? Or haven't you even listened and just hear? Why do you hear but you don't do? No, I hear. Well, let's see. I hear, but you don't respond. You see, it can become delicate. So I don't advise this one for marriage counseling, because it's sensitive. And we're sensitive beings, especially men. We prefer selective hearing. The problem is not about hearing, it's about the responding. We can hear everything, but do we respond? Or only to a part of it, the nice part or the easy part. This is why it's very hard for marriage counseling, this one, because it's the responding part that becomes tricky. To hear is a verb, To remember, to respond, and to obey. And what must we here respond and obey to? Well, chapters 4 and chapters 5 that just preceded this entire story. So what I must do starts with hearing. The reason why I must hear is there is an L. His name is Yodhe-Vavhe. He is the only L. He is one. And that is why I will respond with hearing. Period. There's no disputes, no ifs and buts. Chris spoke last week about Sion and Og, human reasoning and comforts, conveniences, the two giants that needs to be killed. I'm going to touch upon it a little bit later again, but it's so true here, because those are still the giants of our time. Human reasoning, yeah, but this and but this and but that and but this, and comforts and conveniences, Sion and Og. They're still well and alive today. And basically what Moses is teaching us here is, each one of us have to kill those two giants. Human reasoning and conveniences. He is Yodhe-Vavhe, he is Creator El, and stop it. That's it. The moment that we start to add human reasoning to it, then the past becomes many. Not responding with hearing becomes idolatry. Ooh. Yeah. Let's continue. And you shall love Yodhe-Vavhe, because let's turn to love. I mean, the hearing part is difficult. Let's go to the love part. Your Elohim with all your heart, with all your being, with all your might. That's the weapon against idolatry. That's how you fight against idolatry. So he says, there's a warning, keep away from idolatry, but immediately he gives us the equipment to fight idolatry with. Love Yodhe-Vavhe with all your heart and with all your being and all your might. So where the first action is to respondingly listen, the second one is to love. But it is also a verb. It's also a verb. The scope of that love is explaining the demand it places on our hearts, our soul, and our strength. How much of our heart, of our soul, of our strength? To what extent? To what capability? What's the scope thereof? Well, that's the degree of the love. The word there is all. We're going to talk about all shortly. Love is not a feeling, an act of the will. There's a song like that many years ago. In the 80s and 90s, I think that it was quite popular, that song. Love is manifested in what we do and how we respond. I think that's why Paul had quite colorful language when he spoke about love. He says, love, patient, kind, jealous, don't boast, don't be arrogant, don't act inappropriately, don't seek your own agenda, don't be provoked, don't forgive, rejoice in righteous behavior, be joyful over the truth, be content, be reliable, hope, persevere. All the different words that Paul is using in the context of love. Love is hard work. It's all of those things. Hekkers. Can we not get a bit of discount here? I mean, be patient with some and be kind to some. Do not be jealous. Be joyful over the truth. But the truth hurts, man. No, man. Come on, Paul. So, love is an action. Love is work. Because that's the detail of love. Ish. I think it's time for coffee. But we haven't started yet. This is still sort of in the introductory part. Okay, but I'm teasing. Okay, and you shall love Yodhe-Vavhe, your Elohim. The one whom you love, that one will be your Elohim. The one that you spend all those things about, that Paul has just said, the one that you dedicate to your life towards, well, that one will be your Elohim. Let it be Yodhe-Vavhe. You will be my people and I will be your Elohim. It was his choice, by his kindness, by his grace, to invite us through to establish a relationship with him by covenant. So how will the world know that he is our Yodevavai, our Elohim, our master? I've mentioned it earlier. It's not because we're going to say it, it's because we're going to live it, because we're going to hear it, respond to it, and act on it. And those are the two words, Shema, hear, and love. When we hear, respond, and love, there will be a camp that's going to be lekker. And people will say, I want to be in that camp, because it's lekker there. The coffee is good, the rusk are excellent, the soup is fantastic, brotherhood is beautiful, things are happening, it's cooking, I want to be there. When we listen to it respondingly, we are witnesses that his Torah, his word is good, just, and righteous. And they will come to the camp. And Moses, in his opening words, are inviting us, everybody, for that camp. So there's a bit of a mirror here. The question is, do we reflect that in our being as a kahal, as a community? But there's also a mirror to not just to us as a fellowship, but broader, bigger, as believers in George and then beyond. And you will love him with all your heart. Well, this is a tough one, because all means all. Do not love him partially or incompletely or imperfectly. But suddenly this seems totally impossible, because we just simply cannot do that. We're people of sin. Not even Moses was able to do it. Who has not failed? Who has not doubted, stumbled? If we're honest, which I suppose we all should be, we will realize that we have idols. We have idols. It's either a sports team, a music star, politician, economics, whatever. We somehow, somewhere, have got Sion and Og for our human reasoning and our comforts. We've got our idols somewhere. Like Rachel, putting there in the saddlebag. Nobody must see them, but they're there. Yodevavai does not demand what we cannot deliver, though. So what does the word all mean? The word all means not achieving everything, but giving everything. I'm reminded of the fact that many weeks you will go through, even many days you will go through, and you will say, I have worked extremely hard, I'm tired. And I look back and I can say, but what have I actually done today? And you can see nothing. Luanda, this one is for you. It's a lippet in the clipper. So you're finished. What have I achieved this week? That's our Western mindset. What have I achieved? The question is, have we given everything? If we've given everything, then you've given all. And as we get in the habit of doing it, as we get in the habit of every week, every day, everything we have, as you are in that process of repetition, what happens? Hey, you're becoming fitter and fitter and better and better and fitter and fitter and starting to get it right more and more. That's why an athlete has to train every single day. He knows what to do, he needs to run. But he's going through the repetition to get better at it. And that's why we're through the Shabbat every week, through the annual cycles every year, because we're getting better and better and better at it. It's not about achieving it. It's about giving everything. This is a huge challenge. The heart. The heart speaks to the way of our choices. Are we seeking His ways in all our choices? Am I giving everything to seek His ways in my choices? Or am I just randomly doing? Because the neighbors are doing it, it's nice because I've done it. Or am I seeking to honor Him every time, giving Him everything in the way that I've decided on my choices? Because it's applying His perspectives in character in our ways. All my heart, giving everything to get His perspective on matters. My being, the whole person. It is the process of becoming through dialogue with the Creator. It's that process of becoming. Becoming. I'm learning. I'm not perfect, but I'm giving everything. What's Paul saying about this matter? Have I already reached it? Or am I continually striving towards the goal? I think he understands this idea of giving everything in this process of becoming. The might, it is the whatness of life, all the stuff. Everything that could be a what in our lives. All the stuff that we have on loan to do His bidding, the great abundances that we have in His hands, to His glory. We are to love Him with all our provisions that we've got on loan from Him. Because we are the stewards. Yeah, but, that little, whatever possible thing is very special to me. Well, if it's on, but it's on loan. Or is it an idol? And so this is what the Shema is asking us. Where are the idols? Are the idols in our hearts in terms of our ways, how we think about things? Do they have higher esteem, higher relevance than the ways of the Father? In terms of my process of becoming, ek so gemaak en laat staan, ou Jannie. I'm not going to move. This is how we did it and this is how we're going to do it. Or am I going to seek Yahweh Wafa and everything in this process of becoming nearer and closer to Him? And yes, what you have blessed me with, I accept it as a loan from you with gratitude. And these words which I am commanding you shall be in your heart. They will manifest in your heart in various different ways. And by doing them, it's a whole thing about repetition. Doing them. They shall be in your heart every moment. They shall be in your heart when you get up and when you go to bed. On your doorposts, around your forearms, your heads, your ears. They will be everywhere. It's not a homework assignment followed by a test, but a statement that doing them will result in knowing them. I remember vividly that when we started with Shabbat, it was like, I don't know this, I don't understand. I mean, it's rugby, and it's this, and it's TV, but as you start to do them, it's like, oh, okay, I start to understand what's going on here. And you learn it, and you get insights into it. It shall be in your heart. And it helps you on the becoming part. Repetition produces a changed heart and incorporation of Yahweh Wafa's instructions into every fabric of how we live. When we go in and when we go out. That's exactly what the Shema is saying. When you go in and when you go out. The words are given this day to initiate this process of becoming people instructed by Him. Just keep doing them. And I'm reminded of the fact that as we are doing them, because He is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, and we don't go in arguments about who He is and why these instructions are. We just do them because He is the authority, and that's why we do them. He will graciously give us insights into His pathways as to why we're doing it. And then it becomes a happy conversation with a living L. And you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. It will be part of your being, and part of your being is the impressing part. To cut into the hearts of our children. But it must be in our hearts first, because what's in our hearts will be impressed on their hearts. This is a tough one. I suppose when you're in a community, in a tented environment, and there's no internet, and no TikTok, and no facelifts, and no nothings, then it's rather easy to impress it. But there are some other ways as well. Then it becomes difficult. But that's part of this word for impress is actually like an incision. Like when you make like a mark on their hearts. And it shall bind them as a sign on your hands, and they shall be on the frontlets between your eyes. We normally just sing and say that one line, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God is one. But this is the entire Shema. This is still part of the Shema. Yes, that one line is the one we say because it's nice and it's easy to say the one line. But this is the entire body of it. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. The sign refers to His awe-inspiring events and miracles, the signs of His sovereignty. He is Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Stop. Let's not argue about it. Let's not go in debates about it. Let's not have other idols next to Him. Let's not compare Him to other idols. He is set apart. These signs are reminders of who He is, demonstrated through and by His mighty acts of power. Never forget that these symbols express what we think and thereby express what He thinks. If we apply His symbols in our lives, then those symbols becomes an expression of what He thinks, because they are His symbols. And as we go into it, and as we learn it, and as we rehearse it, and as we get more familiar with it, what are we saying to idols? We would like to have none of you. We only serve one God. And then Mark. Remember, this is the backdrop of what the Pharisee and the scribe is actually asking the question. That's what the scribe knows. That's his a priori learning. He's familiar with what we've just shared. And upon this backdrop, he asked this question. And one of the scribes coming near, hearing them reasoning together, knowing what he had answered them well, asked him, which is the first commandment of all? So it's a trick question on the one side, but on the other side, it's a very honest question. And our master answers with, there shall be no idolatry. Speaking right into the mindset of the time and what that person knows. And these are red letter words. These are words by our Messiah Himself. In the King James, I think they're highlighted as red. Red letter words. And Yeshua answered him, the first of all commandments is, Hear, O Yisrael, Yehovah, your Elohim, Yehovah is one. And you shall love Yehovah, your Elohim, with all your heart, with all your being, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first command. No wonder the scribe said, you're right. No idolatry. That is what the 12 tribes answered Jacob, our father. No other gods. No idolatry. But just sort of on a side, sort of a small detour here. O Israel, Jehovah our God, Jehovah our Elohim. That part is one that we can sort of wrap our brains around. But just remember that these are red letter words by our Messiah himself. The question is, who is our Israel? Because you cannot say those words and not understand Israel and understand Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. And the fact that the two is also one. You cannot just read the one part and not the other part. You have to answer the question, who is Israel? Otherwise, the words of the Messiah does not make sense. Because he's addressing it to Israel. So this creates a bit of uncomfortableness. The other thing is, you cannot hear if there's not a voice. The voice of the Master. So let's just listen to the voice of the Master. So the Jews surrounded him and said to him, how long do you keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, say to us plainly. And Yeshua answered them, I have told you and you do not believe. I've told you, I've spoken to you, and you do not hear. There's a voice and there's not a listening. There's a voice, there's not a responding. By not responding, there's no belief. The works that I do in my Father's name, they bear witness concerning me, but you do not believe because you are not of my sheep. As I said to you, my sheep hear my voice, and there are no idols. Because they will follow me, and no other idol. And I give them everlasting life, and they shall by no means perish. My Father who has given them to me is greater than all, and the one who is able to snatch, and no one is able to snatch me from my Father's hand. And then he quotes this Torah portion. I and my Father are one. Whew. And that created a theological uproar. They wanted to kill him for that. He could have stopped just short of that one line. They would have gone into debate with him and argue with him and theological questions and human reasonings and so on. Whew. This line is the difficult line. But where does this question of hearing, voice, and idols come from? So if we understand that a little bit, then we understand what our Messiah is actually doing here. For that, we're going back, we're not fast forwarding, we're going back to Genesis 3. And they heard the sound, the word is actually the voice. Veshemayu et kol. Shama et kol. Shama is the grammar is sort of changed all around there. Veshemayu is basically just Shama is the root, et kol, call for voice. The question is, whose voice? Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh's voice. And we heard the sound, heard the voice of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim walking about in the garden. Going to skip that. And he said, I heard your voice. Whose voice? Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh's voice. And then, because you have listened to the voice of your wife, not Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh's voice. Now this has got absolutely nothing to do with gender. Let me be very clear about it. It's about listening to another voice. It's about listening to another voice, not to the voice of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. That you are naked and that you've gone astray. So now suddenly we realize that behind Eve and behind story sits a snake who had no legs to stand on, but he was arguing his case through reasoning and reasoning and reasoning. It's Sion. And she saw something that's nice and potentially good to eat, which is Och. It's those two giants of human reasoning and comforts and conveniences in Genesis 3. And she was listening to the wrong voice. Adam was listening to the wrong voice, not listening to the voice of Yahweh, and the rest is history. So a Messiah saying, you hear the voice, but you don't listen, speaks into, there's a voice in the garden, but you're not listening to that voice, you're listening to another voice. Don't listen to another voice. There's one voice. It's the voice of Deuteronomy 6, the voice of the Shema. Do not eat of it. And Yahweh Elohim made coats of skin for the man and his wife and dressed them. Big story here, just in a few seconds. Trees don't grow skins, you do know that. So there was a sacrifice. There was an offering. There was a priest, a high priest overseeing this whole sacrificial system there in Genesis 3. Leviticus is very clear as to who must get the skins. The priest must get the skins. Right there, Adam and Eve has been ordained as priests of Messiah Yeshua going forward. And we're still carrying those skins today. Messiah Yeshua's word is still covering us today. Messiah Yeshua's words are still clothing us today. Exodus 19. Diligently obey my voice. Shema, Shema, Bekoli. Hear the voice. And guard my covenant, and you shall be my treasured possession. And these are the words which you are to speak to Israel. This week's reading, I'm not going to read everything, I'm just going to highlight it. Hear a voice. Hear a voice. Obey his voice. Shema, Koli. Shema, the voice. As the people has heard the voice, Shema Kol. Every time the two words, listen to the voice. Hear his voice. Hear his voice. Hear his voice. Hear his voice. Right through the entire Deuteronomy 4. Deuteronomy 5. Hear the voice. Hear the voice. Hear the voice. Hear the voice. It's all about hearing the voice of the Master. And obeying. So now Deuteronomy 6, where the Shema comes in terms of Hear, O Yisrael, doesn't just fall out of the sky. It comes out of a plea from Moses. Hear the voice. Hear the voice. Hear the voice. And if you don't, there will be idolatry. And you will fall astray. I am pleading, hear the voice, because that's the antidote to idolatry. That's how you nullify. That's how you get rid of idolatry, is by hearing the voice. So, hearing is believing. And then they, the scribe, said to him, Yeshua, we are not born of whoring, we have one Father, Elohim. And Yeshua said to them, if Elohim were your father, you would love me, for I came forth from Elohim, and I am here. For I have not come for myself, but he who sent me. Why do you not know what I say? Because you are unable to hear my word. That accusation of Messiah is still true today. To every single person alive in this world, still ask us, do you hear my voice? You are of the father of the devil, Ish, and the desire of your father you wish to do. Och and Sion. Human reasoning, comforts, conveniences. He was a murderer from the beginning and has not stood in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he speaks the lie, he speaks of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And because I speak the truth, you do not believe me. Who of you proves me wrong concerning sin? And if I speak the truth, why do you not believe me? He who is of Elohim hears the words of Elohim. Therefore you do not hear because you are not of Elohim. Hear the voice, hear the voice, hear the voice. It's a plea from Moses. John 12. He who believes in me believes not in me, but in him who sent me, and he who sees me sees him who sent me. If anyone hears my words, but do not watch over them, does not guard over them, does not hear them respondingly, I do not judge. He who rejects me and does not receive my words, as one who judges him, the word which I have spoken shall judge him in the last of days. Therefore, whatever I speak, as the Father has said to me, so I speak. Listen to my voice. Hear the voice of the Master. And then, look out, brothers, Hebrews 3. Lest there be in any one of you a wicked heart of unbelieving in falling away from the living Elohim, but encourage one another daily, while it is still called today, lest any one of you be hardened by the deceivableness of sin. For we have become partakers of Messiah, if we hold fast to the beginning of our trust firm to the end. If we go full out, if we give everything from the beginning to the end. Today if you hear the voice, Shema Koli, Shema, hear the voice. Do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion. And it takes them back to Egypt. And to the reason why they have not entered into the land, because they were not able to hear the voice. For who, having heard, rebelled? Was it not all who came out of Egypt, led by Moses, with all whom he was grieved for 40 years? Was it not with those who sinned, those whose corpses fell in the wilderness? So we see that they were unable to enter in because of unbelief. This is in the other side, the back side of the Bible. I think we need to go back to the front side. The front side reads best better. It's tough. Respondingly here, it's linked to faith. And this is where I think the psalmist has got it so right. I'm going to end with 2 psalms, one as a prayer. In terms of hearing the voice of our Father, our Master, to guide us. It's not about achieving everything. It's about giving everything and becoming, listening to the voice of the Father. And very interesting that the Hebrew writer says, encourage one another. Encourage one another. And I think that's what we're doing. Encourage one another. As we are training, as we are exercising, as we are going through this, we're becoming fitter and fitter to understand what's going on and to see what's going on and to respond accordingly and to truly hear. To identify idols in our lives because we really don't want them. And then to be that community which is of a tented camp. Imagine. Let's just, for a moment before I continue, let's just for a few seconds, close the eyes and think of that tented camp. And you and I are inside that camp. With beauty, with love, with care, with grace, with kindness, with support, with forgiveness, with joy. Celebrating together the goodness of our Father. Celebrating the voice of the Master. Celebrating the wonders that He has done in our lives. Celebrating the fact that He in His great wisdom has given us Beit Hanan, where we can plea, that we can hear, that we can obey, that we can respond, but that we can build a community of faith and of love. Within the absolute joy to know that we are part of that number because of Messiah Yeshua. I'm going to read Psalm 29, a section of it. Ascribe to Jehovah, O you sons of the mighty. Ascribe to Jehovah esteem and strength. Ascribe to Jehovah the esteem of his name. Bow yourself to Jehovah in the splendor of set apartness. The voice of Jehovah is over the waters. The owl of his esteem thunders. Jehovah is over many waters. The voice of Jehovah is with power. The voice of Jehovah is with greatness. The voice of Jehovah is breaking the cedars. Jehovah is breaking the cedars of Lebanon in pieces. The voice of Jehovah cuts through the flames of fire. The voice of Jehovah shakes the wilderness. Jehovah shakes the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of Jehovah makes the deer give birth and strips the forest bare. And his temple, everyone says, esteem. Jehovah sat enthroned at the flood, and Jehovah sits as sovereign forever. Jehovah gives strength to his people. Jehovah blesses his people with peace. Wow, what a psalm. I think he understands this concept of the voice of the Father and listening to the voice of the Father and following after that. And therefore, let's pray together Psalm 27. Jehovah is my light and my deliverance, whom shall I fear? Jehovah is the refuge of my life, whom should I dread? Because of you, we've got a tented camp. And we can live within that tented camp with grace, joy, peace, contentment, happiness, knowledge of belonging, with healing, with restoration, with a sense of purpose. Because you are the one that is with us. Whom shall we therefore fear? We will not fear the voices of the news. We will not run away from it because we're in your tented camp. When evildoers come against me to eat up my flesh, my adversaries and my enemies, when they shall stumble and fall? Though an army while an army encamps against me, my heart does not fear. Though battle comes up against me, even when I would be trusting. One matter I ask of Jehovah, this I seek, to dwell in the house of Jehovah all the days of my life, to see the pleasantness of Jehovah. And by hearing your voice, by listening and studying and obeying, giving weight to the Shema, and what it means, we will be able to see the pleasantness of Jehovah. Wow. May we see your pleasantness, O Jehovah, today on this Shabbat, in us being together, surrounded here in this tented camp. Also this week, in our workplaces, with our family members, our friends, and what we do. For in the day of evil he hides me in his booth. In the covering of his tent he hides me. On a rock he raises me. And now my head is lifted up above my enemies all around me. And I offer in his tent with shouts of joy. I sing praises to Jehovah. Because you are high and lifted up. Hear, O Jehovah, when I cry with my voice, and show me favor and answer me. Teach me your way, O Jehovah, and lead me in a smooth path because of my enemies. I'll continue praying for a moment, but just a detour. In all of Scripture, this is the only verse which I could find. The words Shema, hear, the name of our Father, Yoreh Vavai, the word call, voice, and the word Hanan in one. It's the only place where I could find all four together. So I'm going to read it again. Hear, O Jehovah, when I cry with my voice, and show me favor and answer me. Teach me your ways, teach me your Shema, so that I can really, truly, and honestly Shema every day with my entire heart, my being, my soul, with everything I have, and lead me in a smooth path because of my enemies. Living in a tented camp while you protect us, being a witness to the greatness of the name of Yahweh, and be a testimony of His goodness and mercy. Amen.